And I think a lot of people don't understand what it takes to work undercover. I worked undercover in a very limited capacity. I did it on multiple times, but it was a hard thing, I think, for me with my, like, I was a street cop for a long time. I'd been in the military for a long time. You know, you really had to kind of turn off some of your security senses, your cop movements, and try to not act like a cop, right? And I found that was really hard for me personally. I mean, I did it, and you know, I had some successful cases, but man, to do it in the level that you did it, long term, I don't think people understand quite what goes into that. And some dudes were just great at it and really excelled at it. What really drew you to working undercover?
It was challenging, for one, and like my boss, who I referenced earlier, Jim Fearson, his requirement was for the agents in his group, every agent had to do at least one undercover, because he wanted that agent to know what it felt like. You know, so if you're going to be running an undercover deal and you had an undercover agent working for you, he wanted that agent to know what it felt like to be the undercover agent, because it's very stressful, right? So that was part of it. You know what I mean? That's how I got started. You know.
Is it something you think that came naturally when you started doing it?
Well, I learned. I sat back. You don't just jump in. Like I would sit back and watch John Cooper, these other guys. You'd be a cover team, and you'd see how they interacted, and you see how they talked, and so you sat back and learned. You know, like a pupil before you actually got into the field. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I know early on you had talked about a story too, which I thought was interesting. It's a good point to bring it up now. I remember you were telling me one of the first times you did undercover, you guys were taking down a crew, and I think you gave, you know, a verbal signal for your cover team, because people don't understand when you're working undercover, you might have a gun, but you don't have a vest, you don't have all your law enforcement stuff. You have a cover team that you're relying on to come save you if something goes bad, and you know that's through, you know, signals and words and whatever. But I remember you telling me, like, you know, you gave the signal.
Right. It was my first undercover, and I was buying stolen Flex X, which is a flexible plastic explosives that had been stolen out of Jacksonville. And this guy who worked for a gun manufacturer was trying to sell it on the street to one of our informants in Miami. And the informant basically had told this guy that it was going to be used to blow up a U.S. Marine base in the Philippines. So I met this guy in undercover capacity because I agreed to do it. And he shows up with the explosives, and I'm talking to him about it. And I said, hey, just to reiterate, it's going to be used to blow up a Marine base, barracks in the Philippines. And he basically says, I don't care, I just want my money. And so coincidentally, he was on his way to take his daughter up to she was a freshman and starting college, and she was taking his daughter up to Gainesville to move her into her dorm room. And so he just made a stop with the explosives on the way before he was driving up to Gainesville to take his daughter to college. But so anyway, I gave the takedown signal. There's a verbal and a visual, and they didn't pick up the verbal on the wire. And the guy just kept wanting me to get in his car and get in the car, go for a quick ride after I'd already done the deal. And I thought that was kind of weird, you know? So my training agent was a smart guy, had given me his dog to take on the deal. And I thought that was kind of weird. And I was like, why didn't you take a dog? He said, cops don't take dogs to deals. I said, okay. Long story short, they kept missing the signal, so I used the dog in play to get out of the vehicle and give the takedown signal, and they came in and made the arrest.
Yeah, and I would imagine for a hot second, you can kind of get nervous, right? Because you're dealing with somebody who's selling explosives, doesn't care what they're used for, works for a firearms company, probably armed, and so it's this weird feeling of, hey man, is anybody listening to me? Is anybody really watching me? And then, you know,
this isn't how it went at the academy.
Yeah.